First, environmental groups from the East Midlands are holding urgent talks with the government tomorrow. They want to discuss a decision to halt a pioneering programme of vaccinations of badgers in Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire to protect them from TB. DEFRA, the government department responsible, says there's a worldwide shortage of the vaccination and it's needed for human use. But wildlife groups are worried that it'll mean more badgers will be culled instead.
The government statement actually explained that the cull was working, although we would question those figures on success, and we're really worried that any lengthy delay in the vaccine being made available could lead to further pressure for culling, particularly in our area in the East Midlands. We do understand there is a worldwide shortage, but what we need to know is we need to know what's being done to get those stocks back up, both for humans and to make it available for badgers again as part of this programme.
Well, David Trudinick, DEFRA suspended the programme of vaccinations after speaking to Public Health England, but they were keen to say that vaccination does still form very much part of their strategy and that we shouldn't assume that culling will be the automatic next step. But you can see, can't you, why wildlife groups would be concerned?
Yes, the Badgers Act, first one came in 1992 during the Conservative government's period then, and protecting badgers is important, but we also have to be realistic. And we have got a shortage of vaccine, but the government's committed over 25 years to eradicating bovine TB. But I also think that culls are part of the solution and they've proved successful in Australia and New Zealand.
So would you welcome a cull?
I think culls are regrettably necessary. In fact, I would be in favour of giving farmers greater freedoms. I think that you would have a reduction in stocks now, but the badger population would quickly recover.
OK, well, Willie, there's a worldwide shortage, as we've just heard, of this vaccine, and clearly people and not animals are the priority here. Would you support a cull of badgers if it was the only option and the way forward?
No, I wouldn't now. I was a minister in DEFRA 10 years ago, and we considered and discussed this matter at great length.
Why wouldn't you now?
Because I think the experience of the culls that have taken place have been pretty awful, and I think the general view is that it really hasn't scientifically achieved what it was supposed to achieve.
When you say pretty awful, in what respect?
In the sense that it hasn't lowered the number of badgers as it was supposed to do. It seems to have failed in a number of ways, and experts have described it as an epic failure. So I think vaccine is the way forward, and I very much hope the DEFRA changes its mind.
David Trudinick, what do you think about Willie's view on this?
Well, I disagree. There is very strong evidence that culls have been effective, but I also think we could make greater use of farmers generally in protecting against bovine TB. I think that is something we need to look at again. OK. Well,
that meeting with DEFRA takes place tomorrow. Next, with unemployment falling again this week, it raises the question of which areas in the East Midlands most need new jobs. In fact, one Conservative MP has said his constituency doesn't need the extra employment likely to be created by Europe's largest distribution centre doubling in size. Here's our political editor, Tony Rowe.
So that horizon will be completely obliterated.
See those white buildings in the distance? Well, if Magna Park gets its way, they'll be up to the hedge, devastating for the homeowners here.
The noise, the impact, lights right on the doorstep is going to be profound.
Will you stay?
I won't have any choice because the place will become unsaleable.
Objectors have different reasons to protest about the plans.
I feel that economic development is necessary in the right places, but it should be need, not greed. And need should be established, it should be sustainable. Houses, distribution centres should go where there is a need, i.e. jobs are required.
Living here, where we've got this gorgeous countryside surrounding us, it's going to be coming up to this hedge just behind me and all the way over there. So we're literally going to be engulfed by warehouses.
So what is Magna Park exactly? Goods come in from around the world and are sorted and distributed all over the country. Geographically, this is a good spot.
You have to come here to appreciate the scale of Magna Park, the size of 500 football pitches at the moment, making it Europe's biggest distribution centre. It sits in that golden triangle between the M1, the M6 and the M69.
But the MP who has met the company behind the plans, which could create 700 new jobs, has now come out against the idea.
The fact is that it might be good for the nation as a whole, this development, but for my particular constituency, there's a real risk that it will increase traffic to unacceptable levels with these heavy HGV vehicles trundling down the villages and the roads, that there will be noise pollution, that the air quality will decrease. Why do we want that in our constituency? Is it not better to locate these parks where there is a genuine need for jobs?
This week's unemployment statistics show why the MP can claim any new workers here would have to be bussed in from somewhere else. South Leicestershire is one of the best places to get a job in the country. 423 claiming job seekers allowance, that's 0.8% of the working population, ranking it 596 out of 650 constituencies for unemployment. Neighbouring Bosworth compares well, 439 people, 1%, and a rank of 531. Go further north on the M1 and unemployment rises. Erewash, for instance, 914 people, 2.2%, and midway in the constituency rankings. By the time you get to Nottingham North, it's 2,510 people claiming job seekers allowance, 5.7%, and in the top 20 for unemployment. So the East Midlands needs jobs, so why create them at Magna Park?
One of our greatest assets is that we're in the middle of the UK. There's lots of investment going on in roads and rail at the moment. If we don't have the facilities when people actually get here, then we risk becoming an area that people just pass through. We can't let that happen. We need to have the growth in the East Midlands, and I think this is a great opportunity to really give us something that will help do that.
Harborough councillors will consider the first of the expansion plans next week. Approval has been recommended, but it won't end there. People around Lutterworth who are objecting so forcibly to the increase in lorries around the town will take their fight direct to the government if necessary.
Well, David Trudinick, in some ways it does seem extraordinary that an MP like Alberto Costa would say he doesn't want development which would create hundreds of jobs in his constituency.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? But we're actually
what do you think of what he's saying?
I will tell you, we're actually having too many jobs. Can you imagine it? And it's a mark of the government's success. It's no surprise that Alberto Costa is standing up for his constituents' concerns in that area. But it's also no surprise that Harborough District Council will probably pass this application because there are a lot of people that do want that, to see that going ahead. But
would you ever see yourself saying that you don't need any more jobs?
We need lots of jobs, and my constituency unemployment's down to 1%. And there will be a lot of my constituents working at Magna Park now, and many going there to come. The fact that East Midlands is outstripping the South East now in terms of job creation is an amazing achievement. I don't blame Alberto Costa for standing up for people in the area. Okay. It's his job.
Willie Back, you live near Magna Park. Can you understand the objections?
Yes, I can understand the objections. I don't see this as a political issue at all. This is an issue of common sense. It is true that unemployment is incredibly low in South Leicestershire and around the Lutterworth area. It's also equally true that all jobs are very much to be wanted.
No, they're precious.
And there are all sorts of places in the East Midlands, not far away, but some distance away, where jobs are very much wanted. The problem is that in Magna Park, only 18% of the 1,000 or so people who work there, or the 9,000 who work there now, 18% come from the Harborough postcode area. 90% of people come in by road.
They need the jobs.
They need jobs. The question is, why not try and put these proposals in another part of the Golden Triangle or elsewhere?
But isn't that just NIMBYism?
I don't think it's just NIMBYism, because jobs really aren't needed there, and the consequences in terms of the infrastructure are going to be awful. You only need to go through Lutterworth, and the film showed it, to see that the amount of traffic, lorry traffic, that goes through it now, it's hardly surprising it's one of the most polluted market towns in the whole country. It's way over the EU.
And that's a concern, isn't it, what he's saying about pollution?
We are always concerned about pollution, and it is important. But we also must recognise the pressures on the East Midlands now. A lot of people want to come and work here. A lot of businesses want to come here, and we've got huge infrastructure improvements such as the M6A14 junction with the M1. we have to recognise that there is going to be a lot of pressure, and we're going to see a lot more demand in this area.
The East Midlands Chamber of Commerce, who we heard from in our film, have welcomed the unemployment figures, but say there are worrying trends ahead of us. As we've seen, there's been turmoil in the world markets this week, worries about the Chinese economy, uncertainty over the EU referendum that's still to come. We're not out of the woods yet, are we?
Well, there are issues out there. There are the global issues, there's the surprising collapse in the oil price, the problems in China. But we also have to recognise the success of the East Midlands and the extraordinary story that people are discussing whether we've got too many jobs, something that's never happened in the last 30 years. So that's really the big story today, is that anybody should question job creation.
Let me just talk about the East Midlands for a moment. There's 70 miles or so from Milton Keynes right up to Atherstone in Warwickshire, where logistic companies already have places, and there are new proposals. At the moment, the ways those planning applications will be considered will be by individual district council planning committees who will decide, make individual one-off.
But doesn't it suit those logistic companies to be there? You can't just put them somewhere where it doesn't make any commercial sense to them.
It certainly is, but this is a national matter, and I would have thought these are applications, both the ones at Magna Park and elsewhere, which should be called in by the government. There should be some national strategy as to logistics throughout the Midlands, and I think that's something that ought to happen, which is why I regret really that these one-off planning applications are happening all the time, and it may lead to a complete mess.
A national strategy is what's required.
Well, if Harbour turn this down, it'll be decided by government inspectors. But one of the things
And do you think they'll just push through with it?
That's not quite the same thing.
Well, I think that this will probably go ahead one way or another. But I think we also have to understand that members of Parliament have to represent their constituents. And what Alberto Costa is probably going to achieve is some amelioration of this bill. There will be better facilities, better roundabouts, something on those lines. We do this as members of Parliament to support all the people in our constituency. We listen to both sides of the argument.
OK. Well, David Cameron says a promise to put £20 million into helping Muslim women to learn to speak English will help them integrate into society and tackle extremism. Some Muslim women here in the East Midlands say his plans are divisive and will only increase racial tensions. Others have welcomed it, saying helping people to speak English will bring them closer to the communities they live in. Helen McCulloch's been gauging reaction among Muslim women here.
It's not often the conversation amongst these Nottingham mums strays into religion and politics. But this week, David Cameron's comments have got them talking.
Well, we are a group of Notts moms, and it is a multicultural non-profit group. We welcome mums from any nationality here. And English is not only a useful language here in the UK, anywhere they go in this world, it's going to help them.
It's exactly the kind of organisation the Prime Minister wants to see more of, tackling social isolation and promoting community cohesion.
How much more difficult is it for somebody that doesn't have that fluency in English?
They don't know the language, they don't have the courage, it won't allow them to, come out of their shell, to utilise them. And all these things, definitely the language barrier is ending up being just isolated.
But the £20 million of funding for English classes won't be available for everybody. David Cameron will be targeting the money at Muslim women.
I do welcome the announcement that they are going to dedicate money, and if that's in the form of English classes, I would welcome that. However, I think that it should be opened up to all women.
It's a topic for discussion at the Sharma Women's Centre in Leicester, where English classes are regularly held. Whilst the money's been welcomed, they worry it could end up dividing communities.
We've actually had lots of women ring up from different faith communities saying, well, why is this fund not for us? We need to learn English. And Sharma Women's Centre have been here for 30 years providing English support to women of all faiths. And the common barriers being the language, not the actual faith of that individual.
It's actually alienating communities that we need to engage with. And also the notion of radicalisation linked to Muslim women. This fund is very welcome, but at the same time, I think there's millions of pounds that have been taken out of the ESOL service, and that was engaging with all communities. And to target one community is actually divisive.
Divisive it may be, but in a time of austerity, one thing's for sure. Any new money will be welcomed by community groups looking to bring society closer together.
Well, we're joined now by Yasmin Nathani, who's the chair of the Sharma Women's Centre in Leicester. Yasmin, is this divisive or helpful?
It is divisive in the sense that we will have to turn away some members who want to learn English, because we are a women's centre. We provide services for women from all walks of life, all religions.
Are you finding that's what's happening already? You're having to turn people away because they're not Muslim?
Well, we haven't received the funds as yet, but
Yeah.
when we do, we would have to turn away people, and that is not the reason we built that centre. The centre is for all women, regardless of their religion. So we provide services for all women from all walks of life.
Okay.
And if we had to turn people away, that would be like against our principles.
The reason you set it up in the first place.
Yes.
Well, the thinking behind what David Cameron is saying here, though, is that people aren't integrating into society. There's a danger of them becoming alienated, which leaves them open to extremism. Is there some truth in that?
I don't believe there is any truth in that, because, you know, just because a mum doesn't speak English, the child will become radicalised. No, it doesn't happen that way. Women are women, they are there to support the children. And if you look at the percentages, how many people who have become radicalised were not speaking English? You've got to be articulate, you've got to be educated, and you've got to be computer literate to be able to learn what's happening around the world. And if you want to become radicalised, nothing will stop you, you will do that.
David Trudinik, she's got a good point there. And
Yes,
this
she
is
has.
divisive, is what Yasmin is saying.
It's a very good start. The Prime Minister's made a good start, but in the early 80s...
Is it a good start if it's divisive? Is that really a good start?
It is a good start to try and increase the language capacity and English language speaking abilities of these minority groups. And he's focused on the Muslims, and that doesn't mean he's excluding the Hindus and the others.
But is that singling Muslim people out once again, though, and
in
creating more division?
In the 1980s, I spent several years at Oxford University researching policing and race relations, and policing and race relations in this country together. And one of the
things
key,
have moved on a lot since then, though.
One of the key problems then, as it is now, is the failure of minority groups, particularly women, to speak the language. That does create poverty, and poverty breeds extremism. And it's absolutely right we take this initiative. There clearly have to be some adjustments to cope with the situation in Leicester, which is a multiracial city, unlike Bradford, which tends to be more of a Muslim rather than an integrated minority group community, but we're on the right track.
Willie, some of the women that we heard from in our film welcome this news, and they do say it will stop social isolation.
Well, of course, we want everybody to be able to speak and understand English. But frankly, it's this government that cut a large amount of spending on teaching.
£45 million.
Yeah, a lot of money last year, and many more millions of pounds in the years before. So it's a bit rich now to come up with 20 million. But why Muslim women? Why were Muslim women just picked on when there are many other women and others who can't speak English? And it has nothing to do with extremism,
Yasmin,
as the government was suggesting.
Do Muslim women feel picked on?
We do, yes. I'm a Muslim woman. I teach ESOL. I'm an ESOL tutor myself. And in my classroom, I have got women from all backgrounds, all religions. And, you know, we never have... Religion is not the issue. It's the learning the English. They're all interested in one thing, and they want to learn the English so that they can integrate in society. And there is a big thing going on that, you know, people need to integrate in society, learn English, because they cannot get the immigration status in this country if they don't learn English.
And some people do feel that this is your leader picking on a minority, really, within a minority already.
He's not picking on anybody. He's addressing...
Well, I'm using Yasmin's words.
Well, I'm also going to put things into my words, and I've already said that I think this is a start in producing a strategy for improving the English-speaking capacity amongst all our ethnic minorities. And he's chosen the Muslim nation and Muslims in this country because at the moment we have a lot of problems in the world in Muslim countries, and I think the focus, and people expect him to focus on the Muslim community here to see what we can do to improve their chances and provide greater integration
Yasmin.
But to make English the root cause of those problems going on in the world is not correct.
I didn't say that.
No, that is wrong. It's not because people are not can't speak English they've become extremists. That's a different argument altogether.
And why was there
but having said that, we welcome the initiative. Yes, there is a need for ESOL provision. You can't expect say to people integrate in society, learn English, and then not provide the provision. Yeah, you've got to.
I agree absolutely with Yasmin. Why was there also this hidden threat that those who are over here on spousal visits for 5 years might, if they don't do well enough, be deported after 2.5 years? It's a kind of bullying approach, and no Prime Minister in such a sensitive field as this should ever indulge in that way.
Bullying, David?
I don't agree with that. I think we've focused on an area that's been neglected for far too long.
It's something we do have to discuss, clearly.
Years ago, I was involved in talking to the Yemeni community in Cardiff in the 80s when I stood for Parliament there. And I was shocked to find that none of the women spoke the language at all. And I think that led to them remaining in a state of poverty. And I absolutely welcome this initiative to give wider choice and greater opportunities to women of minority groups in this country.
Yasmin Athani, thank you so much for coming into the studio and talking to us.